All right, so the next one here, the U.S. rejects Putin's offer for Ukraine negotiations. So the U.S. has rejected Russian President Vladimir Putin's latest offer for negotiations to end the war in Ukraine, as the Biden administration has consistently discouraged diplomacy in the nearly 2 years since Russia launched its invasion. So Putin made this offer during his interview with Tucker Carlson. Putin said, quote, "We are willing to negotiate. You should tell the current Ukrainian leadership to stop and come to the negotiating table," end quote. And when he said you there, he's referring to the U.S. So in response, a spokesperson for the White House's National Security Council told the New York Times that the U.S. has no reason to believe Putin is being genuine. The spokesperson said, quote, "Both we and President Zelensky have said numerous times that we believe this war will end through negotiations. Despite Mr. Putin's words, we have seen no actions to indicate he is interested in ending this war. If he was, he would pull back his forces and stop his ceaseless attacks on Ukraine," end quote. So the latest rejection of diplomacy with Russia comes as it is clear Ukraine has no chance of being defeated. Ukraine has no chance of defeating Russia on the battlefield, and Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines are facing shortages of weapons and personnel. Describing the bleak situation, a Ukrainian battalion commander on the front lines told the Washington Post, quote, "There is no positive outlook, absolutely none. It's going to end in a lot of death, a global failure," end quote. So the NSC spokesperson told the Times, quote, "Ultimately, it's up to Ukraine to decide its path on negotiations," end quote. So that old line that it's up to Ukraine to decide. Zelensky is still pushing his so-called peace formula, which as a plan to end the war, and that would include a full Russian withdrawal, Russia giving up Crimea, war crimes tribunals, and Russia paying reparations. So all non-starters as demands for talks with Russia. And Russia and Ukraine were engaged in peace talks in the early days of the invasion, but those negotiations were discouraged by the West. David Arakhamia, who's a member of Ukraine's parliament and led the Ukrainian delegation to Istanbul during peace talks with Russia in March 2022, he said in November that Russia only wanted a commitment of Ukrainian neutrality to end the war at the time. He said Ukraine didn't trust Russia, didn't want to sign a deal, but he also mentioned another reason why Ukraine didn't want to sign a deal, and he confirmed earlier reporting that said then British Prime Minister Boris Johnson told Zelensky that even if Ukraine was ready to sign a deal with Russia, Ukraine's Western backers were not. So he said, and this is confirming that reporting, again, this is Ukraine's top negotiator for the Istanbul talks in March 2022. He said, quote, "When we returned from Istanbul, Boris Johnson came to Kiev and said that we would not sign anything with them at all, and let's just fight," end quote. So here we are nearly 2 years later, and how many hundreds of thousands of people have been killed in this, and they still want to keep it going. No diplomacy. Nope, they want another $60 billion to fund the thing.